Hi, my name is Garrett. I'm the COO and co-founder of Microgreen Manager. And today we're going to talk about an exciting new feature to help save you a ton of time when just getting started. And that is bulk importing your crops. So we're here on our crops page. After you log in, you can hit the app button, hit crops, and that'll bring you here. Of course, right now we have no crops loaded in. And if we wanted to, we could add a new crop and we could go through that process of manually adding our crops. Now, if you're like me, I used to have all my crop information stored in an Excel file. And so I still had it organized in some manner, but what you can do now is you can import crops with your CSV file. CSV is just a fancy way of saying Excel. And so once you hit that button, this pop-up will show up and it says you can download our template and fill it out with your crop information for import. What will happen, you'll hit the Get Template button and you can download the template. When you open up the import template, this is what you'll see. This is going to be your header bar up top, and it corresponds exactly with the new crop template, the new crop pop-up that you see when you use the software online in your web browser. You'll have your yield per tray, the name of the crop, the yield, the grow time, the sow density. All these things are options for things that you can put in the pop-up, and so they'll have a corresponding column here on this template. We can see here, for example, we have arugula, astro, we have a yield per tray of 5.5 ounces is the unit, the grow time is 13, the sow density is 12, and it's grams rather than ounces, and there's a max hold time for that column. There's some other columns here that currently does not have any default data in it, but you can add a harvest buffer time and a buffer percentage. Then it has sizes. We have 3 ounces, 6 ounces, 8 ounces. And then we have some of our steps. Step 1 is under lights, when it happens, when the planting happens, when it gets weighted in germination, and then of course harvest after 13 days. And it goes on, so you can fill in all this information, but this is the set of crops that you're going to get if you select to add all default crops. And you can add all default crops without going into this template, but this, looking at this template, downloading it and opening it, will show you exactly what is going to be added to your account if you decide to add default crops. And of course you can come in and you can delete these default crops, or you can edit the average yield, the sow density, anything you'd like. Now if we scroll down further, we'll see some of the instructions to make sure that the import is successful. First, it says do not modify the headers. So do not modify this yellow bar up here. These headers are specific to how the software will read the template when you go to import it again. Now I'm not going to go through each one of these parameters, but there's a ton of parameters here in terms of what can and cannot be modified, what is optional versus required, and what kind of inputs the software will accept. For example, if you want to do yield per tray unit, it's required and it has to be either ounces or grams. You can't misspell and have 2 S's on grams. It'll throw an error for that row. And then down at the bottom, another important limitation is that it will read the file from top to bottom and stop reading when it reaches any empty rows. So for right now, if you were to re-import this template, it would not actually add any crops because it's going to read the header row, and then it's going to read this first blank row on row 2, and it'll stop. So at the very bare minimum, what you need to do is come in and delete those 3 rows, and that way right now it will import all 30 crops, assuming there's nothing wrong with any of these cells. And I'll intentionally introduce a few errors so you can see what those look like. So I'll add a 10.5% buffer percentage for dill. The error there is that it has to be an integer. It can't be a fraction or a decimal. Let's see, I'll go ahead and I'll misspell ounces here and I'll add an extra S. And that's it. I'll go ahead and save this and then import it, and I'll show you what happens when we import this template back into the software. So we're back on the software. We've modified the bulk import template, and now we're going to select the file. We've selected the file, and as soon as we select it, the software will read that file according to the parameters and rules that are laid out therein, and it will show you what it is about to import. So we'll see we have 28 rows were successfully processed. There were 30 crops, so that means there were 2 errors. 2 rows were not successfully processed. and we'll see those errors at the bottom in a sec. But for now, we can see what is going to be imported are all these crops by these crop names with these yields per tray, this sow density, these grow times, sizes, and the number of steps. Now, of course, we're not going to lay out every single step here, but you can go into each one and double check if you'd like that the parameters you put in are accurate. So it's going to import all 28 of these. And these are the two that had a problem. So row 4, if you look back at your CSV or Excel sheet, row 4, it was dill, I believe. So row 4 for dill had an error with the buffer percentage column. The buffer percentage must be an integer. So we can go back and we can fix that. And then row 14, the yield per tray unit, the unit there for how we want to define what the yield per tray is, it has to be grams or ounces. If you remember, I tacked an extra S onto the ounces unit for that column. So it's throwing an error there as well. So what you can do is you can go back and fix it and re-upload it, or you can upload these 28 and then you can go in and manually add the 2 that are missing or any variation thereof. So we have them all here, and let's just go ahead and import and see what happens. And just like that, all of these crops are now imported into your Microgreen Manager account according to either the default settings or some hybrid of default and some parameters that you've changed, or you can just wipe them all and use that template to copy and paste from any existing CSV file you have to rapidly import all your crops. And this goes from being a 2-hour task for, say, 30 crops to being a 5-minute task. And that's it. We can go ahead and we can look in here and we can see all that information is there, from grow time to yield to hold time, buffer percentage, sizes, and all the steps.